X-ray diffraction, XRD, principles, instrumentation, and applications in modern materials characterization. X-ray diffraction, XRD, is one of the most important analytical techniques for investigating the atomic and molecular structure of crystalline materials. By measuring the interaction between incident X-rays and periodically arranged atoms in a crystal lattice, XRD provides detailed structural information, including lattice parameters, crystal symmetry, phase composition, crystallite size, strain, and structural defects. Owing to its precision, versatility, and non-destructive nature, XRD has become indispensable in chemistry, materials science, geology, nanotechnology, semiconductor engineering, and pharmaceutical research. The development of XRD originated from the discovery of X-rays by Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen in 1895. A breakthrough occurred in 1912 when Max von Laue proposed that the wavelength of X-rays is comparable to the spacing between atoms in crystals. Walter Friedrich and Paul Knipping experimentally verified this hypothesis through the first crystal diffraction experiments. Shortly afterward, in 1913, William Henry Bragg and William Lawrence Bragg established the fundamental principles of X-ray crystallography through their determination of the sodium chloride crystal structure. Their work led to the formulation of Bragg's law, which remains the foundation of diffraction analysis. In 1916, Peter Debye and Paul Scherrer extended the technique to polycrystalline materials, introducing methods that later evolved into modern powder diffraction analysis. Since its inception, XRD instrumentation has undergone remarkable technological advancement. Early devices, such as the Weissenberg camera, introduced by Carl Weissenberg in the 1920s, enabled improved diffraction recording. At the same time, contemporary systems now incorporate computer-controlled goniometers, automated detectors, advanced optics, and sophisticated software for real-time data acquisition and analysis. Despite these technological developments, the fundamental diffraction principles governing XRD remain unchanged. Fundamental principles of XRD. The principle of XRD is based on the constructive interference of monochromatic X-rays scattered by regularly spaced atomic planes within a crystal. When incident X-rays strike a crystalline material, they are diffracted at specific angles determined by the spacing between crystal planes. Constructive interference occurs when the scattered waves satisfy Bragg's law. N lambda equals 2 d sin theta, where n is the diffraction order, lambda is the X-ray wavelength, d is the interplanar spacing, and theta is the diffraction angle. The resulting diffraction pattern acts as a structural fingerprint of the material. Analysis of peak positions reveals lattice spacing and crystal symmetry, while peak intensity and shape provide information regarding crystallinity, grain size, orientation, strain, and defect density. For example, narrow and intense diffraction peaks generally indicate highly crystalline materials, whereas broad peaks may suggest nanocrystalline domains or structural disorder. In powdered samples, millions of randomly oriented crystallites contribute simultaneously to the diffraction pattern. This random orientation ensures that multiple crystallographic planes satisfy Bragg conditions during measurement, enabling complete phase identification. In contrast, single crystal diffraction focuses on an individual crystal to determine precise atomic arrangements and symmetry relationships. XRD techniques and experimental methods. Several diffraction techniques have been developed to accommodate different sample types and analytical requirements. Among them, powder X-ray diffraction, PXRD, is the most widely used due to its simplicity and effectiveness in identifying crystalline phases and monitoring structural evolution in precursor and final products. When the diffraction conditions of a crystal are unknown, two classical approaches are commonly employed: the Laue method and the rotation method. The Laue method uses a stationary single crystal exposed to a polychromatic or white X-ray beam. Because the crystal simultaneously diffracts multiple wavelengths in different directions, the method rapidly provides information about crystal symmetry and orientation. However, overlapping diffraction spots often complicate interpretation, particularly for complex structures. Consequently, the technique is mainly used for qualitative crystallographic analysis. The rotation method, also known as the oscillation or precession method, involves rotating the crystal in a monochromatic X-ray beam of known wavelength. Diffraction data are collected over multiple angular positions, producing highly detailed structural information. In powder diffraction experiments, randomly oriented particles generate concentric diffraction rings, whereas single crystal rotation experiments yield discrete diffraction spots that can be reconstructed to determine atomic coordinates. Modern XRD systems typically operate using a theta-2 theta geometry in reflection mode. In this arrangement, the sample rotates by an angle theta, while the detector moves simultaneously at an angle 2 theta relative to the incident beam. This synchronized motion ensures accurate measurement of diffracted intensities and enables precise determination of interplanar spacing. Components of an X-ray diffractometer. A conventional X-ray diffractometer consists of three essential components: the X-ray source, the sample stage, and the detector system. The X-ray source generates radiation through thermionic emission. Electrons emitted from a heated tungsten filament are accelerated under high voltage toward a metal target, typically copper, cobalt, or molybdenum. Upon impact, inner shell electrons within the target atoms are displaced, and the resulting electronic transitions emit characteristic X-rays with well-defined wavelengths. Copper K-alpha radiation is particularly common because of its suitable wavelength for many crystalline materials. The sample holder positions the specimen within the X-ray beam path. Precise alignment is essential because even minor displacement can alter diffraction angles and introduce systematic errors. Sample holders are designed to minimize background scattering and maintain stable orientation during rotation. The detector records the intensity of diffracted X-rays and converts the signals into electronic data. Modern detectors provide rapid acquisition, high sensitivity, and improved signal-to-noise ratios compared with older scintillation counters. The collected diffraction data are processed computationally to generate diffraction patterns for structural interpretation. Advanced XRD Techniques. Recent advancements in XRD instrumentation have expanded the technique's analytical capabilities significantly. Grazing incidence X-ray diffraction, GIXRD, is particularly valuable for studying thin films, coatings, and surface layers. In this method, X-rays strike the sample at very shallow incidence angles, minimizing penetration depth and enhancing surface sensitivity. Because GIXRD is non-destructive, it is widely used for semiconductor coatings, protective films, and nanostructured materials. High-resolution X-ray diffraction, HRXRD, utilizes highly monochromatic X-rays and optics with extremely low angular divergence. This configuration enables sub-angstrom structural resolution and precise characterization of epitaxial films, multilayer heterostructures, and semiconductor interfaces. HRXRD is extensively employed in the electronics industry to evaluate strain, lattice mismatch, crystal quality, and layer thickness in advanced semiconductor devices. Reciprocal space mapping, RSM, frequently combined with HRXRD, allows detailed visualization of strain distribution and defect structures in crystalline films. Accurate simulation of reciprocal space maps, including the influence of mirrors, monochromators, and analyzer optics, has shown excellent agreement with experimental measurements obtained from highly ordered silicon crystals. Synchrotron-based XRD further enhances analytical sensitivity by utilizing highly intense and tunable X-ray beams generated from particle accelerators. These systems enable in-situ and operando measurements under extreme conditions such as high temperature, high pressure, or electrochemical cycling. Structural analysis and data interpretation. The interpretation of XRD patterns involves both qualitative and quantitative analysis. Phase identification is typically performed by comparing experimental diffraction peaks with reference databases such as the powder diffraction file, PDF. Each crystalline material possesses a unique diffraction signature determined by its atomic arrangement. Peak positions provide lattice spacing information, whereas peak intensities reflect atomic distribution and preferred orientation. Peak broadening is often analyzed using the Scherer equation to estimate crystallite size in nanomaterials. Additionally, lattice strain and defect concentrations can be quantified from variations in peak width and asymmetry. More advanced analyses involve reconstruction of the crystal structure from diffraction intensities. Symmetry elements, lattice constants, and atomic positions can be determined with remarkable precision. Techniques such as Renninger scans and reciprocal space analysis enable detection of forbidden reflections and subtle structural distortions that are critical for identifying polymorphs and isomeric structures. However, accurate interpretation requires careful consideration of instrumental and sample-related factors. Preferred orientation, amorphous content, and crystallite imperfections may significantly distort peak intensities. Thermal fluctuations during X-ray generation can also introduce variations in signal intensity, emphasizing the importance of controlled experimental conditions and calibration procedures. Sample preparation and experimental considerations. Reliable XRD measurements depend strongly on appropriate sample preparation. Powdered samples are generally ground to particle sizes below approximately 44 micrometers to ensure random crystallite orientation and improved diffraction statistics. Fine powders typically produce sharp, intense peaks, whereas coarse or inhomogeneous samples yield broader and less reproducible patterns. Preferred orientation is a major concern in metals, polymers, and layered materials because manufacturing processes often align crystallites along specific directions. Such alignment may suppress certain reflections and produce misleading structural information. Rotating the sample during analysis or reorienting the specimen by 90 degrees can reduce these orientation effects and improve data reliability. Contamination, moisture, and poor sample homogeneity may also degrade diffraction quality. Therefore, careful handling, uniform packing, and optimized alignment are essential for obtaining accurate structural information. Applications of XRD. XRD has become a universal characterization tool across numerous scientific and industrial disciplines. In materials science, the technique is routinely used to identify phases, monitor crystallization, and evaluate microstructural evolution in ceramics, alloys, polymers, and nanomaterials. Semiconductor industries rely heavily on HRXRD to assess epitaxial film quality and strain in microelectronic devices. In pharmaceutical research, XRD is critical for identifying polymorphic forms of drug compounds because different crystal structures may exhibit distinct solubility, stability, and bioavailability. For example, subtle polymorphic transitions in active pharmaceutical ingredients can significantly influence therapeutic performance and shelf life. Geologists and mineralogists employ XRD for mineral identification and quantitative phase analysis of rocks, soils, and ores. Industrial sectors, including cement manufacturing, mining, and metallurgy, utilize automated XRD systems for rapid process monitoring and quality control. The technique has also demonstrated value in planetary science. NASA's Ch'min instrument aboard the Mars Science Laboratory successfully identified clay minerals and amorphous phases on the Martian surface, highlighting the robustness and adaptability of XRD technology in extraterrestrial environments. The growing interest in nanotechnology and hybrid materials has further expanded XRD applications. Temperature-dependent diffraction studies reveal changes in nanoparticle morphology and crystallinity, while combined XRD and electron microscopy analyses provide insight into graphene oxide composites, perovskites, and two-dimensional materials. Future perspectives. Emerging developments continue to expand the capabilities of XRD. In-situ and operando diffraction techniques are increasingly used to monitor structural transformations under realistic operating conditions, such as battery cycling, catalytic reactions, and thermal processing. These methods provide dynamic insight into material behavior that cannot be achieved through conventional post-analysis measurements. Integration of XRD with complementary analytical techniques such as scanning electron microscopy, SEM, transmission electron microscopy, TEM, Raman spectroscopy, and synchrotron imaging is also becoming increasingly important for multiscale characterization of advanced materials. Future research is expected to focus heavily on emerging material systems, including perovskite solar cells, hybrid organic-inorganic frameworks, quantum materials, and two-dimensional nanostructures, where a precise understanding of phase stability, strain, and defect structures is essential for optimizing performance. In conclusion, X-ray diffraction remains one of the most powerful and versatile analytical techniques for investigating crystalline materials. Since its development in the early 20th century, XRD has evolved from a fundamental crystallographic tool into an indispensable method for structural characterization across science and engineering. Modern advancements such as GIXRD, HRXRD, synchrotron diffraction, and reciprocal space mapping have significantly improved analytical precision and expanded the range of accessible materials. Through detailed analysis of diffraction patterns, XRD provides critical information regarding crystal structure, phase composition, strain, defects, and microstructural evolution. Its non-destructive nature, high accuracy, and broad applicability continue to drive innovation in materials development, semiconductor engineering, pharmaceuticals, nanotechnology, and planetary science. As instrumentation, computational analysis, and in-situ methodologies continue to advance, XRD will remain central to future discoveries and the development of next-generation functional materials.